Second one was better.
Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception is the last game of the Uncharted PS3 trilogy. It was one of the two games that came with my PS3 and not one of those cheap download code inserts. It came on a game disc, in a plastic case with a sleeve insert like how all games packed in with a console should be. Console makers need to do this more often, giving a physical disc instead of a slip of paper with a code on it. Uncharted 3 signifies the last of Nathan Drake's adventures on the PS3. Naughty Dog is working on another Uncharted game for the PS4. I know it's weird. Every console generation for the PlayStation family is always a new intellectual property. Although it was odd that they started a new one, The Last of Us, on the PS3, which is being ported over to the PS4 a la Tomb Raider Definitive Edition.
But why bother creating a new IP for the PS4? Uncharted practically prints money for Sony, so they can't stop that gravy train now, can they?
Naughty Dog admitted that Uncharted 2's multiplayer could have been a lot better. I didn't even know that it had multiplayer until I was researching the development for this game. For Uncharted 3, they focus on building a more robust multiplayer and focus on giving realistic environments, yada yada yada. It's basically the same development story that we heard with Uncharted 2, using 100% of the PS3's power, the game being 50 gigs in size but on one disc, and how they evolved Uncharted 2's game engine for this one. There's nothing much more that I can say other than I feel that because they focus more on developing a more robust multiplayer, that they lost sight of the single player campaign.
Because apparently a game sucks if it doesn't have good multiplayer, regardless of how good the single player is. I guess there was a town meeting about this somewhere that I missed.
The graphics are miles ahead of its predecessor. The textures on the models look more realistic, and Elena and Sully got updated models. Elena looks like an actual person and not a gigantic-eyed Muppet, allowing for much better facial expressions that match what she's saying, which, if she had this model in the previous games, it would have made her character development better. As I said in my review of that game, her facial expressions didn't match her words and how she said them. Sully looks younger, and I mean a lot younger, which makes it look awkward when you see him in the flashback 20 years ago and then compare it to his present-day self. It looks like they just colored his hair gray instead of making his face and skin to match his current day age. Nathan Drake looks the same, but he's the star of the game, so updating his appearance wouldn't work that well, although they really did give him a darker 5 o'clock shadow.
It'd be like if I was on camera with a subtle change. You'd notice, but would it really be the same?
The music score is good like the previous games, matching the levels and action. And the action is everything we'd expect from the Uncharted series. However, in terms of gameplay, it takes what feels like a giant leap backwards from what Uncharted 2 had laid out. Instead of playing an evolved form of Uncharted 2, I feel like I'm playing the first, and therefore some of the same issues that I had with the first game return, and returned with a vengeance. In the first game, it felt like going down a hallway to an open area filled with chest-high walls and weapons scattered about where you were thrown into a battle with an entire army. And when you think it's over and you made your way to the other side of the room, another giant wave of enemies appear, making the battle go on for what feels like forever. And that's what happens here. The battles are just way too drawn out, and the sense of balance that Uncharted 2 had is thrown out the window. In Uncharted 2, I could, with enough skill, go through entire sections of the game without firing a single bullet.
I feel like I can't play the way that I want to, which is to take a strategic approach to combat, something Uncharted 2 let me do. Here, it's either going guns blazing or just shut it off.
The combat itself feels slower because it feels like they put more emphasis on hand-to-hand combat to make it more cinematic. Square still punches and triangle still dodges, but you can also use the environment to attack enemies with, like picking something up and hitting them with it or slamming their head into a chest-high wall. However, Drake's punches have no power to them at all, making hand-to-hand combat take longer than it did in Uncharted 2. The accuracy of the weapons is not that good. I've shot guys in the head and nothing happened, even at point-blank range with a shotgun, and this was something that was widely criticized, and people kept flooding Naughty Dog's forums and NeoGAF so much so that Naughty Dog released a patch allowing players to switch it to the way Uncharted 2 had it. However, I feel this doesn't excuse the overextended battles where you clear out one side of the room then have to go to the other side just to clear out more bad guys.
And I'll say it again, Uncharted 2 did it better, and I hate to keep repeating that, but Uncharted 2 is how to do a sequel properly.
Uncharted 2 had a realistic sense of fighting an army and environments. You weren't trapped in a room with a bunch of dudes and forced to fight your way through them, and if you were, you could think of an outside-of-the-box way to come up with a solution to solve your problems. But here, you're forced to stay in line with the developer's thinking, which at times just doesn't make sense. Why is it I can hang from a ledge and throw a regular dude off before he stomps on my hand, but yet I'm not given the ability to do that with the armored dudes, who, by the way, can take several grenades to the face before going down, and their legs can pass through solid objects that I can't even climb up on to stomp on my hands. Then there's the massive dudes, which are essentially walking meat refrigerators that get in so close that you're required to fight a lengthy hand-to-hand combat sequence with amongst a torrent of gunfire, drawing out the battles even longer to where it's so irritating that I find myself getting a headache from the frustration that it's causing me, especially in the pirate section where the enemies have laser sights, and there's so much cover that instead of dodging, Drake will latch onto cover you may not want to be against as you'll be fully exposed.
And then boom, headshot!
You can argue that the walking armored refrigerators and the steady stream of dudes from Henchmen R Us add difficulty and challenge. Difficulty, yes, but not challenging. There's a fine line between the two. Difficulty does not equal challenge. Being thrown into a room with a bunch of dudes who have perfect accuracy and know where you are at all times is difficult but not challenging. A challenge would be testing your problem-solving skills, outsmarting your enemies, not outshooting them, like sneaking up on them in the midst of battle and snapping their neck, or shooting a propane tank that an enemy got way too close to. Combat feels more like a war of attrition, be it shooting or, and especially, hand-to-hand combat. And I'm playing on normal difficulty. It makes me wonder if they did the old-school method of renaming difficulties when games came from Japan, where very easy is easy is normal is hard, and hard is very hard, and crushing is you're gonna die mode.
The balance and challenge that Uncharted 2 had is replaced with attrition and walking meat walls with the ability to phase through solid objects. Yeah, I'm calling bullshit on that.
I'm not really going to go over the story because I couldn't get into it, but if you're worried about spoilers, skip to this part. Once again, Nathan Drake is yet again looking for another lost fabled city, which if you think about it, all of Nathan Drake's adventures on the PS3 have ended in failure, as everything he goes after ended up being evil. The golden idol of El Dorado was lost to the bottom of the sea because it contained spores that turned people into bloodthirsty mutants. The Chintamani stone was destroyed because it turned people into bloodthirsty mutants. But surprisingly, with the third game, it's just a case of polluted water. The character development is something that I can't get behind. In the first game, Drake was a smartass with a childlike wonderment to history and treasure. In the second, he was a smartass but more serious. In the third, they returned his childlike enthusiasm but made him reckless. In the first and second games, he was adventurous but cautious. He was aware of the danger, so much so that in the second one, he was willing to give up so that no one else would be in danger, but would still rescue those in danger because he knew it was the right thing to do.
In this game, it's almost as if he doesn't care, and that's not the Nathan Drake that we know. Oh, wait a second, his name's not really Nathan Drake after all because they had to pull that cliche. For all we know, his name could be Jeff Albertson.
At one point, Elena scolds Drake by saying that Sully would go to the ends of the earth for him and not to make him do that. He even tells Elena that she knows that she misses all the action, and she tells him that she doesn't. Sully tells Drake that he needs to be more careful, which Drake brushes off as Sully saying that he's getting too old for all the adventure and danger. It's also revealed that Drake and Elena got married after the second game and separated due to Drake's love of danger, which is a betrayal to the character we've all grown to love. Drake has always put his friends above all else and would never risk their lives and is willing to turn back when he knows it's too dangerous. And hinting that Nathan Drake isn't his real name, meaning we were lied to since the character's debut. While Nathan Drake may not be his real name, my point is, this is not the Nathan Drake we played in Uncharted and Uncharted II.
As you can probably tell, I feel that this game just doesn't live up to its predecessor, suffering from what we like to call sequelitis. It's not a bad game, but just decent.
The battles that overstay their welcome return from the first game. The heavily armored enemies from the second return, but with no sense of balance as they take way more to the point of unnecessary damage to down. Riot shields, which acted as a temporary power-up in the second game, only need a few hits to be destroyed and cause you to drop the weapon that you need two hands for. There are sections that go on for way too long, like after Drake is drugged and running through the streets, or when you chase after the guy that drugged you, whose name is Talbot, which that part makes no sense story-wise, as he's not the main antagonist, but at the time of this section, the main bad guy Marlowe was sitting right across from Drake. Why he goes after Talbot and not Marlowe? I don't know. There are sections that have no relevance to the story, like Drake getting kidnapped by pirates and having to go through their base. It's really ham-fisted in there too. They explain that the pirate leader was hired by Marlowe, and while she orders him to kill Drake, he instead tries to make Drake give him the location of the city they're looking for. Then he says he has Sully, forcing Drake to save Sully when in fact Sully is being held captive by Marlowe elsewhere. And Marlowe even told Drake before this section that they had Sully in their clutches, making me wonder why Drake believed the pirate guy.
Making the entire section where I broke my controller completely pointless.
I understand that they're trying to go all out for this game, as seeing it would be the last Uncharted game on the PS3. And if you're wondering why I didn't utilize the patch's ability to fix the aiming to make it more like Uncharted 2, I didn't know that the update did that until afterwards. Additionally, I tend to look at games as how they were originally released, before any game fixing patches if I can help it. I want to love this game. I really do. But there's just too many things that prevent me from loving it. The inaccurate gunplay, the long and slow feeling of hand-to-hand combat, the overly long battles, and Drake acting like a reckless fool for the sake of being a reckless fool. But I could forgive all of that if the game just had the balance that Uncharted 2 had.
Coming from Uncharted 2, which was a damn near perfect game, Uncharted 3 feels unfortunately decent. It's not bad and is good in its own right, but Uncharted 2 is just better.